Welcome, everybody. Welcome to The Breakdown. I'm here with Katie Fang. She's got an incredible Substack here you should subscribe to. She also hosts Katie Fang News over on the Midas Touch Network. We've done a few collabs together.
We have.
And what Katie was just reading was a statement from Kristi Noem regarding the fact that, according to the Associated Press and a couple of other sources, state investigators say they cannot access ICE shooting evidence after the FBI has taken it over. I was very concerned about that. And Katie was just quoting Kristi Noem saying, why aren't these people investigating the folks that are harassing the ICE officers? And I remember going all the way back to the January 6th investigation when Joe Biden was trying to get a U.S. attorney appointed in the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. And it took until November because insurrectionists like Ted Cruz and Tommy Tuberville were blocking all of the all of the nominees for the Justice Department based on the fact that they were going hard after the January 6th rioters, but not going hard after the peaceful George Floyd protesters. Do you remember that, Katie?
Well, the hypocrisy, it happens all the time. So it blurs a little bit, to be honest with you, Allison. But yes, I do recall that. I think in any major moment wherein law enforcement is activated or should be engaged in some way, we have rank hypocrisy that happens, which is trying to other side it, right? Like, well, what about that? Or what about this? When in reality, Noam doesn't have a real explanation as to why the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension has now been totally shut out of this investigation.
Yeah, and Governor Walz and I think the deputy police chief yesterday, and the police chief during the press conference made clear that they were going to ensure that the BCA, which is the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension in Minnesota, some local entity was investigating this case in order to maintain transparency. They reading between the lines didn't come right out and say we don't trust Kash Patel and this administration to investigate this properly, but that was the implication. And I was incredibly worried that they would be shut out or somehow supremacy claused in trying to investigate this locally. I was worried that the FBI would take it over. There were videos after we saw, the video of the actual shooting, the murder. There were videos of the FBI going in there and getting all their evidence and taking photos inside the vehicle and getting all their evidence and collecting everything. Probably took the vehicle itself, and then pieced out. And I was very, very worried that local authorities weren't going to get the evidence they needed in order to prosecute. So what does this look like? Because the Associated Press, as you said, is reporting that it says here Minnesota's investigations agency said Thursday that the U.S. Attorney's Office prevented it from taking part in the investigation. And someone else said that their sources told them that at first they agreed to cooperate. The FBI agreed to cooperate with the BCA. BCA, when we say that, we mean the local Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehensions. That's the state investigation. They were willing to cooperate at first until the U.S. attorney, Donald Trump's U.S. attorney, intervened and said, no, stay out of it. We're going to take over this investigation, and now are failing to turn over any evidence to the state investigation.
So, a couple of things to peel away from what's happening here. One, the U.S. attorney is a Trump appointed U.S. attorney. His name is Dan Rosen. And let me be very clear, and I have this from direct personal knowledge. Dan Rosen has no criminal experience whatsoever. And so, in the typical vein of U.S. attorneys that are being appointed to serve in Trump regime 1.0 and 2.0, especially in this one, the latest regime, they don't have the requisite experience to be able to be running these offices when it comes to criminal investigations. And so, the fact that a lawyer with no criminal experience is making a decision that is atypical, irregular, and unusual shouldn't surprise us, but is disturbing because it does create the specter of what are you trying to hide? If nothing was done wrong, police shootings, sadly, as we all know, happen all of the time. And when I was a prosecutor, I was called to active crime scenes to be able to investigate police shootings. And we do it to determine if it was a clean shoot or not. And the fact that you do not have local investigators and local law enforcement involved in the investigation of a police shooting is completely off the charts unusual. And again, it suggests that a cover up is afoot. The other thing that's kind of disturbing is that there is, and I noted this in an episode I did for my YouTube channel that's about to post, there is total and complete manipulation of the crime scene. We have seen we have seen that on all of the bystander footage that the shooter himself and other ICE agents got into their vehicles and either left the scene or moved the vehicles, thereby changing an active crime scene and manipulating an active crime scene. So we already know that the federal law enforcement authorities either were so incompetent that they didn't know how to handle what was going on, or that they were trying to change what the evidence would be. And thank gosh we have people that, in the 21st century are armed with their cell phones to be able to do it. But Allison, we know even from the Charlie Kirk investigation that it took state authorities to be able to do the right investigation vis-a-vis the alleged shooter of Charlie Kirk, because Kash Patel and the FBI wasn't capable of doing it right. So, I mean, I never considered myself a conspiracy theorist, Allison, until I hit, I'd say, 2016. And subsequent to 2016, I feel like everything and anything could be right for. And in this instance, so Allison, I do say this. The Bureau of Criminal Apprehension has released a statement itself confirming all of this information, that there was an agreement to be able to conduct a joint investigation yesterday subsequent to the shooting, and that today, or excuse me, late yesterday, suddenly there was the announcement that no, we don't need you and we don't want you, and it's just going to be the FBI that's doing this investigation. The BCA still has the ability to do an investigation. They're just not going to have access at this time to evidence and et cetera that is being collected by the FBI. But there is no legal bar to the BCA interviewing and speaking to eyewitnesses and people that were present at the time of the murder. And because of that, the BCA can still continue to move forward. Another legal footnote. There is no legal bar exclusively prohibiting the prosecution of a federal official by state authorities. So there is no roadblock. I mean, there is a roadblock that is created by the FBI not sharing their investigative materials with BCA, but the BCA can still move forward. It's just harder, which again gets us back to the beginning of this conversation, which is if you care about wanting to have a clean and thorough investigation, why would you create roadblocks or throw up obstacles in the pursuit of that?
Yeah, it makes no sense. And I do want to say that journalist Radley Balco
Oh, he's
uh,
great, by the way. It's fantastic.
has reported that BCA has pulled out of the investigation. They've pulled out. And just like you said, Steve Vladeck, our friend, who, author of Shadow Docket, who writes the One First blog, who makes
He's
me
great.
smart. He makes me smarter every day with his posts on his Substack, says, tongue in cheek, yeah, this is definitely how you behave when you're trying to bring every resource to bear rather than trying to cover up the unlawful behavior of your own personnel. Now, I've also noticed, and some people have asked, and perhaps you can answer this because you've participated in several investigations, they haven't released the name of the ICE officer. And I know that they weren't, at least as far as I could tell from the video, they weren't wearing badge numbers or their names on their
And he
uniforms.
was wearing a
Gator.
balaclava. Yeah, a gaiter, a neck gaiter up to here. Exactly. Yeah.
How can we even be sure that local authorities know who the shooter is? Are they trying to hide his identity as well? Or is that something that's generally not released at this stage of an investigation, is the name of the shooter?
It's not gonna be publicly released at this stage, but I don't think that there is an active, I mean, again, people could prove me wrong, but I don't think there's an active move to conceal his identity from local and state authorities. It's just not being released at this stage. And there's nothing that's legally prohibiting it being released. They're just not doing it. Again, I'm grateful that there was all that bystander footage though. And, yesterday, Allison, I did a call to action for people to preserve that evidence right now because, there is an absence of kind of footage from the other side of the street from where everything was kind of going on. And, things like ring cameras, et cetera, could have captured more. Although what we have seen so far pretty much conclusively shows that the ICE officer who shot and killed Renee Nicole Good, that his feet were not in the path of the SUV and that the SUV's wheels were turning to away from his body and not towards it. And so, I mean, look, any and all evidence is helpful, but at this point, we know that Governor Walz and also, more importantly, Attorney General Keith Ellison, the Minnesota Attorney General, he is committed to making sure that this investigation takes place. And so, there has been the threat raised by the Trump administration that if state and local officials attempt to go after federal law enforcement or federal officials because of their alleged duties, that they've threatened to even arrest those state and local officials. And so this is really being teed up for a power showdown, I think, between state and local authorities and the federal government.
Right. And Ellie Mistal, another friend of ours, says maybe this is for the best because of this Supreme Court. We don't want it to quickly go up to this Supreme Court and perhaps learn that this is all, according to the six, the way that things go. But I do want to bring up the point that I don't think there's a statute of limitations on murder, on federal capital murder. Which means that if we do elect a proper president and get a proper FBI director and a proper attorney general, that maybe charges could be brought at a later date, at least federally speaking.
Well, I would actually be more interested in making sure that the state investigation and charges are sought because those are not pardonable by the president of the United States. And
Yeah, I
that's a really
agree.
key issue here because you don't want to tee up an opportunity for a federal offense to be pardoned by Trump. We've seen that he has no problem pardoning seditious conspiracy as well as insurrectionists, right? And so in this instance, if we can make sure, a la Derek Chauvin, right? If we can make sure that state charges are pursued, and when that happens, if the state charges are pursued, and if there's an available defense legally to that defendant that invokes some measure of federal law, then that case gets removed to federal court. However, even if it's removed to federal court, the state and local prosecutors remain the prosecutors. It doesn't mean that you sub in the U.S. attorney, which, again, we know is a Trump appointee who made the decision to boot BCA off this investigation. But the state laws are the ones that are being prosecuted. You just happen to transport it into federal court. And if a conviction is obtained on those state laws, those convictions cannot be overturned by way of presidential pardon. So I'm really hoping that we stay laser focused, if we're Minnesota, on what are the available charges. But again, you can't cart before the horse anything, as you and I both know, Allison. You need a thorough investigation. I am also speaking to the investigation that also encompasses people beyond just the shooter himself. I'm talking about the other ICE agents that were there too. And I want to know about their complicity, their failure to adhere to the training that was required, et cetera. I mean, these are the things that I think are critically important as well when they're investigating what happened yesterday.
Yeah, and Adam Cochran posted that he spoke on background to a couple of litigators who go to trial quite a bit on behalf of cops in shooting cases.
Oh, yeah.
And they said they would try to seek a plea deal at this point because these are indefensible cases just based on the video alone. They said, I could argue shot number one and hope for an acquittal, but I can't get there on shots 2 and 3. Another lawyer said a jury will not get past the turning of the wheels, as you mentioned, Katie. And
Mm.
finally, denying medics throws self-defense out the window. And, we just got body cam footage from a local ABC station with the shooter himself saying that he didn't have any major injuries, that he was fine. Maybe had a scratch or two.
Body cam footage. Allison, body cam footage from the shooter's body cam?
I think it's from someone near him.
And the reason why I ask is I posited this morning on YouTube. There is footage of the shooter using his cell phone to record the scene. So when he initially approaches Renee Nicole Good's SUV, he approaches from the rear and he goes to the passenger side and he works his way to the front of Renee's SUV. We can see him on one of the bystanders footage videos holding a cell phone in his right hand, and he's recording things with his right hand, which struck me as unusual because you should not be using or be forced to or required to have to use a separate cell phone, Allison, as you know, if your body cam footage is working. So it is a big question that I would like to have answered. Was his body cam even on? If it wasn't, why wasn't it on? Was it operational? If not, why was it not operational? Because it goes to the reasonableness of his fear of imminent serious bodily injury or death to himself or others, because that's the legal standard that applies to the use of lethal force from the Department of Justice and from ICE. And what's incredibly helpful is the perspective, the vantage point of that officer. When we investigate shoots involving police-involved shootings, we want to know all the information. We don't necessarily assume that it was reasonable. You can't do that, especially when most of the evidence is pointing towards it not being a reasonable response to what is happening. So I am curious to find out, Allison, if that body cam footage you're citing to was one of the cops that was near the shooter versus that shooter's body cam footage itself.
Yeah, and as you said, DHS policy is that you have to wear body-worn cameras. And DHS policy also says that if you are in fear of your life, actually, in any situation, you're not supposed to walk across the front of a vehicle during a stop. But no, ABC obtained body cam footage of Franklin Park Police responding. This is body cam footage from the local police. One last question for you, because I know you've got to get out of here because you are so busy, my friend. Everybody needs to subscribe to your Substack and watch
I
you on YouTube.
appreciate it. I'll let people know. Listen, Allison, the interview that I'm teeing up to go interview that I'm going to post later on my YouTube channel is of a lawyer who used to work for the White House. They work for an organization called Protect Democracy that's trying to make sure, and we're going to explore the ability to legally prosecute federal officials by state entities and to pursue legislation to be able to do it. So that's part of what I'm going to be doing this afternoon.
Good. I love that. And I'll be watching. But my last question is, can we get a local investigation from Keith Ellison if the BCA has backed out?
Well, I mean, the BCA's, let me go to the BCA's press statement because I think it's kind of important. The BCA has said that we expect the FBI to conduct a thorough and complete investigation and that the full investigative file will be shared with the appropriate prosecutorial authorities at both the state and federal levels. If the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI were to reconsider this approach and express a willingness to resume a joint investigation, the BCA is prepared to re-engage in support of our shared goal of public safety in Minnesota. I mean, they are still able to independently do an investigation. Their license to do it is not subject to what the FBI is telling them they can and cannot do. I don't know if that was just a very diplomatic way of saying, y'all are kind of going to do this and we're still going to be expecting to kind of get a full investigative file at the end of this. I personally would want to be doing a contemporaneous investigation for fear of spoliation of evidence, for fear of destruction of evidence, for fear of manipulation of evidence, because this is the Trump administration FBI. And this is the Trump administration DOJ. I think Governor Walz has made it very clear that he does not have any faith in the ability for the feds to be able to do a clean investigation. So to the extent possible, I think that Ellison needs to push this hard and fast. And I also think, as we saw, the Minneapolis mayor, Jacob Frey, made it very clear that he not only doesn't want ICE in his city, but he wants to make sure. And I think Congress also has made it pretty clear, at least the Democrats have, that the investigation has to be done.
Can Ellison do this without the BCA, or does he have to push the BCA to engage again without the FBI's help?
I mean, I don't want to speak to that because I don't really know the answer to that, Allison. I would say, though, the AG's office could. I mean, just like any local prosecutor's office, Hennepin County DA's office could also do an investigation with its own investigators, independent of what the feds are doing. So I can't say necessarily if Ellison could dispatch BCA under his direction to be able to do it, although I would be surprised if he couldn't. I also think that there still has to be some measure of interagency cooperation that they're still trying to do here. But maybe if we all here on Substack and abroad make a big enough stink about it, maybe that can change the tide. You never know.
Yeah, we shouldn't stop speaking out. We shouldn't stop carrying our cameras with us. Canada says elbows up. I say cameras out. It's very important. How
important is it, right? How were we able to see all this, Allison, if we didn't have our cameras?
Yeah, it's how we were able to convict Derek Chauvin. So
right.
Thank you so much for your time. I know you're extremely busy. I'm so glad you jumped on with me last minute because this is just, to me, a blatant cover-up by the White House and the FBI and Kash Patel to protect this murderer. It seems very blatantly obvious to me.
No, and I appreciate always our Substack community. These are the times that we have to be as informed as humanly possible because I always say knowledge is power, and the more empowered we are, the better off we are to be able to combat the disinformation, the misinformation that's already being spread by Kristi Noem, Trump, and others.
Yeah, agreed. All right, everybody, make sure to catch Katie Fang's show. It's called Katie Fang News over on the Midas Touch Network. Subscribe. It's free to subscribe. You always want to make sure that you subscribe and get all of Katie's updates. Same with her Substack. And I really appreciate your time today.
Always, Allison's good to see you. I'll see y'all soon. Take care.
All right. Thanks. Bye, everyone.